What's going on, guys? Corey from Yoda Expedition here. In this video, we're going to be adding the C4 high clearance additions to our low pro bumper. We just installed this a few videos ago. If you want to check that out, I'll put the link down in the description. I'll show you how to do the full install of the bumper, cutting the OEM bumper to make it fit properly. We also installed a winch and a light bar. So if you want to check that out, click the link down below. But getting back into today's install, first thing we need to do is take the templates that are included with the C4 high clearance additions. We're going to be laying those out on our bumper and cutting that so that it fits. We already did do a Viper cut, so in our case we're not going to be cutting off as much as you if you did not do this, but I'm going to go ahead, get everything laid out, and then we can start cutting it. So in the kit you're going to get two templates. You're going to have this bigger one here and you're going to have this smaller one. Cut those out, and then these are going to go, the bigger one's going to go right here, following this body line where your bumper meets the fender. You're going to go ahead and get that all lined up nicely, tape it in place, and then the smaller one, that's going to go down here, following the contour of where this bolt hole is. Get everything lined up nice and tape that down as well. All right, so we have the top template in place and we have the bottom template in place. You're going to take a piece of tape and you're going to put it on the top of this template, right above the paper. So you're not taping the template down to the bumper, but you have a line going right there. Now you can go ahead and take this template off, and we're going to take another piece of tape and we're going to connect from here all the way up the bumper. All right, now we're going to take our tape. We're going to start right underneath that piece of tape that we just put down. And then from there, you're going to want to do a straight line, as straight as you can, up to where your other template starts. And you're going to have to turn or bend the tape just a little bit. Follow that template like that, and then run that all the way to the back of the bumper. When you get back here, your tape should end pretty much right underneath the bolt that holds the bumper on. All right, so now with that piece of tape laid out, you can go ahead and peel off this top piece that you were using for a guide, and you can go ahead and take off this template. Just be careful not to tear it, because you're gonna have to use both templates for the other side. If you do for some reason rip it, they are available on C4's website. You can print a new one. And just a side note, when you go to cut this, you are going to be cutting on the top line of the tape. And if you want, you can cut it a little bit lower. That way you have some wiggle room. You can always cut off more, but if you take too much off, you can't put it back on. So worst case scenario, you can cut a little bit less, and then you can sand it until it fits perfect. All right, so I just finished up laying out the tape on both sides of the bumper, and now it's ready to cut. I am gonna take it off before I cut it, and just make sure that both sides look even. You don't want one side being way off from the other, but I'm gonna go ahead and take this off, and then we can start cutting. All right, so I got the bumper off. I'm ready to start cutting it. I'm gonna be using a air cutoff tool. I do have an air saw. I was gonna use that, but I think this thing's gonna be flapping around too much while I'm trying to cut it. So I'm gonna use that instead. We are going to also have to cut the fender liner. Now we already did cut ours from when we did our Viper cut, but I'm gonna have to go ahead and trim it just a little bit more. So what you're gonna do is where this bolt hole is, right underneath it, just do a straight cut all the way across on both sides, and you should be good there. So let's go ahead and get this thing cut off. Look out. so we got the bumper cut and we have our fender liners cut as well. Now, before we go ahead and start installing the additions here for the bumper, we are going to be covering the washer fluid tank here with a skid plate from C4, because now that your bumper is cut, this section of the washer fluid tank is going to be exposed, and it would be really easy to hit this off of something and break it. So we're going to be putting a skid plate on that. Also, if you had the low pro bumper like we did prior to adding the side additions, these brackets here on the side of the low pro bumper that connected to your OEM bumper, you will no longer need those, so we can go ahead and take those off as well. So to get this bolted up, what you're going to need to do is take out the 12mm bolt here that's holding your power steering cooler line, and then the 2 bolts that are holding this bracket that you installed for the low pro bumper. Take this one out of the frame completely, and then this one here that connects to the bumper, you can just loosen that so that you can move the bracket around. All right, so we got the washer tank skid plate installed. Now we're ready to go ahead and install the C4 additions, the high clearance additions, onto the side of our low pro bumper. So with that, you're gonna have your inner plate, you're gonna have 5 carriage bolts, 5 washers, 5 nuts. So we're gonna go ahead and get this started and make some adjustments. So we got those 5 carriage bolts snugged down enough so that this thing was kind of tight up against the bumper, but I could still move it around. Go ahead and take a tape measure and measure in the front and in the back. You want it to be 1 inch, and that's going to be a good starting point for you. Once you have that, you can go ahead and tighten down those bolts, and then we can get the bumpers in, or the stops for your OEM bumper, and adjust those. All right, so we got both sides tightened down to the low pro bumper. Now I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna insert the stops here. There's gonna be 2 on each side, and that's going to let you adjust the front bumper, the OEM front bumper, in and out so that you can get it sitting flush with your new high clearance addition. It's also going to stop it from flapping in the wind. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those installed. I started with one of the bolts and took one of the nuts and ran it all the way down to the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and thread that in from the backside. Might be a little bit difficult with the powder coat. All right, once that is started, you go ahead and put on the second nut and put on the stopper until that bottoms out. And go ahead and tighten that down. Take the other nut that you just put on and tighten it against the back side of the stop. All right, so we have all 4 of the stoppers on for the OEM bumper. So now at this point, we can go ahead, take the OEM bumper, fit it back in, see if we have to make any adjustments to not only the high clearance additions, but to these bumpers. You're gonna want to turn these until they touch the back of your OEM bumper and push it out so that it's nice and flush with these. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we got the lower portion of the bumper on, and you can see I have a gap all the way up to about there, and then right here we're rubbing really bad to the point where it's not fitting properly. So I'm gonna have to cut more off of that most likely. Same with on the other side. You can see I have a gap all the way up, and then up here it's really bad. So yeah, if I had any suggestions, I would say cut more off from here to here and cut less off from here to here, because I have a huge gap all the way up, and then I'm rubbing really bad in this area. All right, so we got the passenger side to fit up pretty decent. I had to take the flap wheel, and about this section right here, I kept sanding away until it had a nice gap that was pretty close to the rest of it, and now it fits pretty good. If I wanted to, I could move this up just a tad to make it cleaner, but we are going to be putting some molding on here to clean up the edge, and it should look pretty good. So now I'm going to go ahead and clean up the driver's side. All right, so after we got the passenger side looking good, we came over to the driver's side, and like I said, this side was off way more than the passenger side was, so I did a little bit more measuring. I measured from the bottom of the fender here to the top of the C4 add-on, and this side was sitting about a ½ inch higher than that side. So I pulled the bumper back off and dropped this side down, so now both sides are measuring right around 5 inches from the bottom of the fender to the top of this. So I got that measurement the same. Now I'm retightening those bolts. I'm going to try to test fit the bumper, and it should be closer. I'm still going to have to cut a little bit off this top section here, but it should hopefully match the passenger side. So another side note, this TSS bracket, it's a royal pain to get the bumper to fit with this installed. You have to bend it, and it's just really, really tight. So I took it off in the process of me taking the bumper on and off to make sure everything is fitting properly. And then when you have the bumper on, you can slip this back in there and put it back on. It has 4 Phillips head screws. All right, so we just took the flap wheel to this section on the driver's side, and we have it fitting a little bit better. But now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pull the bumper back off. I'm gonna loosen those bolts for this side. I'm gonna tilt it just a little bit more to bring this back edge down and this front edge up, because we have a pretty big gap here and we're almost touching here. So it's gonna take some massaging, and you know, you might not have the driver's side perfect to the passenger side. What I would just do is make it so that you're happy with how this gap looks on both sides and go with that. All right, we made an adjustment to this, threw the bumper back on. I feel like I should bring it up just a tad, but I might just leave it where it's at. The gap is pretty even across the whole thing. And like I said, with some trim molding on there, it'll look a little bit better. So now that we have both sides to the point where we're happy, we can go ahead and tighten those bumper stops on the back. Tighten them out until they just contact your bumper, or if you need to, you can bring them out so that you have it sitting exactly flush with this. Once you have those where you want them, tighten them down, lock them in place so they can't move, and that's pretty much it. Go ahead and put everything back together, the grill, all your bolts and stuff like that. Make sure you put that TSS bracket back in and plug that back in. Plug in your fog lights, and you should be good to go. All right, guys, so that's gonna wrap up the install on the high clearance editions for the C4 Low Pro bumper. They look really good. We did put the trim molding on there, and it definitely cleaned up the edge, made it look a little bit more uniform, and it definitely cleaned it up. So hopefully this video helped you out if you are looking to install these. Like I said, we did a full install on the Low Pro bumper itself. If you wanna check that out, the link is down in the description. And if you wanna grab any of this stuff, it's all available on yodaexpedition.com. Thanks for watching.